Hello, everyone. So first of all, I would like to give a dedication of this talk to Dr. Lev Shcherbansky. He is a dear friend, mentor, and collaborator without whom the material I will be talking today would not have been possible in the form that it is. So the goals of this talk are going to be to come up with a global process architecture. So the way I consider the question of consciousness is from a functionalist perspective. That is, what is it that, what are the processes that are involved in the formation of consciousness from the computational perspective? That is, what are they trying to achieve? What are the inputs and what are their outputs? So the resulting process architecture that we're going to try to arrive at would ideally mimic the functioning of the mind, would ideally be renderable as a computational graph. So if one were to, if one wanted to simulate consciousness using artificial neural networks, for example, then our resulting architecture should give some idea to us as to which modules we're going to use and what are the inputs and outputs of these modules. Finally, obviously, we would want to address conscious experience and what are the processes involved in the formation of it, and emotion and valence. So cognition is a resource-constrained computation. So I guess it's pretty uncontroversial. We're not gods. We have only a limited amount of computational power available to us. Same applies to any computational system in the universe, any conscious agent, any intelligent agent. So what this means is that a mind has to continuously make decisions under uncertainty in a hostile environment where inaction is deadly. So this introduces two low level, by low level, I mean fundamental, not unimportant, objectives for cognitive function, which are speed and accuracy. Speed means that inaction is deadly. If we have a tiger chasing us, we must have fast enough response to run away. And accuracy meaning run action is deadly. We better learn not to stick our fingers into electric outlets and into fire pits and so on. So how can a resource-constrained system attempt to satisfy these objectives of speed and accuracy? So I'm going to propose three features, which are automaticity, modularity, and attention. Let's go through these one by one. So automaticity allows for the speed of response. Stimuli are directly matched to outputs, and an automatic response essentially acts as a classifier. So when a particular pattern in the environment is detected, it immediately matches a strategy that is then immediately executed. This is to contrast with reasoned responses, which require a sequence of going back and forth between observing the percepts and choosing an action, then observing a percept again, then choosing an action, where all of those actions are internal until an outward facing or environment facing action is generated. So this can be roughly matched to system 1 and system 2 in Kahneman's paradigm. Now, automaticity also frees up precious time for other cognitive activities, namely reasoning. So quick note, when discussing automaticity, I will be talking about learned cognitive strategies that no longer require conscious reasoning. I'm not talking about behaviors and strategies that are a priori determined. So things like automatic homeostasis in the body and other processes that are directly hardwired into the system are not within the scope of what I called automatic in this talk. Now, onto modularity. So convergence as quickly as possible is important. So when an agent is learning a particular new strategy, it's ideally the agent wants to learn it fast. This imposes a constraint onto whether an agent can be modeled as a global, whether the learning can take place globally or within a local functional modules. So I posit that convergence is easier to achieve in a system that only needs to propagate learning signal locally. For example, within a specialized brain region, global convergence necessarily is more time consuming since it involves optimization over a large number of variables. Additionally, modular architectures allow for error correction in real-time systems. Most of the system's functionality can be kept intact during error correction. Note that even during sleep, a human has to retain ability to wake up quickly and act almost immediately. This would be impossible if time-consuming, large-scale error correction were necessary. Now on to attention. So another implication of resource constraint is limited memory. Attention allows the system to select most salient and relevant percepts for a given state of self and environment, where self can also be represented as a special object within the environment. So, therefore, by perception here, we're talking not just about the perception of the outside of the agent, but also anything that might be relevant to be paid attention to. The state of the cognitive objects, interoception, and obviously exteroception. Note that attention is not the same as awareness. Awareness can be, awareness is part of the perceptual space that is not participating in conscious reasoning. So, for example, one is necessarily aware of the chair that one is sitting on, otherwise you wouldn't be able to sit up. Your body is continuously adapting for the and shifting slightly in order to stay upright. However, since it's an automatic process, it doesn't require your conscious attention to be paid. So I draw this, this distinction is important because most of the objects in perception are actually within the scope of awareness, but not within the scope of attention. Now, finally, the reason this distinction is important is because, generally speaking, learning requires conscious attention. So while it is perfectly possible to execute a cognitive action on something that is within awareness, it is generally not going to be salient enough in order to trigger a learning process. So now we got, so a conscious system wants to automate as much as possible, which means that we want to compress existing automations so that they take up less time and memory. And we want to convert as many conscious processes as possible into automatic ones through the process of learning. So when does a conscious behavior become automatic? When deliberate action yields unexpected rewards, ideally several times in a row. This is similar to the process of observed in classical and operant conditioning. And I'm directly borrowing from this work here, where an agent is receiving a particular reward and matches this reward to a sequence of actions that produced it, thereby creating an action policy that can now be automatically triggered as soon as a set of percepts is detected. The difference here between the classical behaviorist operant conditioning is that the percepts include interoception and the mental content. So we're not considering purely external space of perception here. Obviously, automatic action can also become more entrenched when it's paired with a strong reward. So this in no way this in no way argues against the kind of unconscious conditioning processes and so on. So when does an automation get reevaluated? When do we need to trigger a relearning process? So receiving an unexpected reward can trigger reevaluation, either when an action that was expected to trigger a negative outcome that was nonetheless chosen because it was the best outcome out of available options, triggers unexpectedly a very positive outcome, or when an action that was meant to trigger a neutral or positive outcome triggers a very negative one. The agent must reevaluate the model of the policy and come up with a better plan. So the two potential causes of error here are either incomplete perception, so the agent didn't pay attention to the right thing, but the policy by itself was perfectly fine, or it is incorrect interpretation where the policy content was an incorrect function on the perceptual content. So therefore, the policy function itself has to be reevaluated. Now, at any given time, an agent could be executing on some selection of available conscious or automated processes. So we have many things we could be doing. And how do we choose? So attention, I'm borrowing attention mechanism, which is common in machine learning today. So it's not the cognitive attention mechanism as as a function that can be used to perform the selection. As a quick recap, attention mechanism takes in some representation of inputs. In this case, these can be percepts, and it generates a distribution of saliency or a heat map of kind over available actions. So when an input we see a tiger, we have available actions. We might want to eat, we might want to sleep, we might want to run. This percept triggers the run action because that's the most salient one in this particular situation. Now, obviously, there can be a variety of adequate actions depending on situation. For example, we could be walking through a forest and we could be bored or we could be hungry. The state of the agent also determines whether a particular what would be an adequate action in a particular situation, especially when the choices are not so clear-cut or salient. So a slightly hungry agent walking through a forest might choose to pick some berries. A bored agent walking through a forest might choose to take a more wandering, a longer path and explore. So so how do we select the attention schema? Attention schema selection is, so the module I'm introducing for this purpose is called the goal hierarchy, where the goal hierarchy essentially selects what is the context or what are the desired outcomes that are most important for an agent at a given moment. So how does, obviously a goal hierarchy has to change depending on the situation. Let's say the agent was hungry, picked some berries, and now this is no longer the top priority. How does this feedback loop work that yields into the reordering of a goal hierarchy? So once an outcome is received, an agent can evaluate the reward. The reward is in turn fed into the perceptual space. So we perceive our state of reward. This is in fact what I will be later describing as the emotional or affective state. So therefore the input into the module that determines the goal hierarchy at any given moment is also the perceptual space. Now, the name of this module will be, as I'm calling it, is the value system. So what is a value system? Value system is, again, an attention function, which is specialized to select goal, to select a goal that is most salient at a given moment. And now the emotion is simply the outcome of the output of the reward evaluation function, which enters the perceptual space. So now what is the content of conscious experience in this case, in this system, which can be rendered as a computational graph. The content would be the content of attention, which is spread over the action space and the perceptual space, and to some extent over the active goal hierarchy. But there is a one-to-one correspondence between the attention schema itself and the selected goal within the goal hierarchy. So, so for all intents and purposes, the content of the conscious experience is the combination of percepts and actions that are within the conscious attention. This is the live learning edge of the system. As I said previously, learning is impossible on objects that are purely in awareness. They're generally, unless there is a very strong reward that is being fed into the system, conscious attention or amplification is required in order to trigger learning within a particular module. And that is what I claim to be the purpose of consciousness. Now, let's discuss briefly what are the features and failure modes of this system. So first of all, an active attention schema affects outcome evaluation. So depending on which percepts are in attention, the selected action and consequently the selected the resulting outcome is going to be different. And it could be very different depending on which attention schema is selected. So for example, if a maladaptive attention schema is selected, for example, if we choose to, I don't know, sleep when a tiger is chasing us, or maybe something less dangerous than a tiger, then there's going to be a pretty negative reward. However, if we choose an adequate action, there is going to be a pretty positive reward, and the resulting emotional state consequently. So the same external environmental state can therefore yield a very different emotional reaction. Now, the difference between the two available, between the attention schema might be quite subtle. So when in psychological, in the space of psychology, for example, a person undergoing the same external situation might react very differently. Some public speakers are very nervous, some public speakers are very confident. It is a very different emotional experience. Why is that? Is because the outcome, the perceptual content for them varies, even if the external action is the same. So this yields the emotional lability that can be associated even with superficially equivalent external states of the environment. Another thing I wanted to talk about is state-dependent learning. Depending on what is in active attention, we're going, as I previously said, learning requires active attention. Depending on what attention schema is selected, different policies are going to be available for learning. Therefore, if an agent is unable to select the correct attention schema for a particular situation, the learning is not going to be available. And similarly, the retrieval or attention to percepts may not be available. So this might explain how, depending on the context, so for example, when an elderly person travels from one location to another, let's say they move from their home into a care facility, they might end up not having certain cognitive functions available to them. It's because their perceptual space has changed and the attention schema is not designed is not flexible enough to take account of this expanded and changed perceptual space, therefore making the cognitive actions associated with that must be triggered by those percepts unavailable. Okay, and that is it. Thank you very much. And here's my email.